Welcome back to Spooky Month 2022, Episode 2, where I finally talk about my favorite slasher, Freddy Krueger, the most unique slasher of the horror franchises. I mean, there's the boogeyman, Michael Myers, who's silent and somehow has supernatural powers. Leatherface, a sad man who gets manipulated by his siblings. Then there's Jason Voorhees, who's the biggest mama's boy. Then there's the slasher that kills you in your dreams. The one place that is supposed to be peace after a rough day. Sleeping is our peace and quiet. Then, when you sleep, there's a man that brings on a nightmare, and he kills you in your dream, but in real life, your life is over. Damn, call me a poet. But what makes Freddy Krueger such an iconic slasher is he doesn't shut up. He cracks jokes and puns. But if he wants to get scary, he will be this evil monster. So the first Nightmare on Elm Street has a great beginning, and it was truly disturbing of a man making his murder weapons, and how it's filmed is like someone watching him with this shaky cam and zooms. Very great beginning. Then it jumps to Tina, this blonde teen at his abandoned warehouse with smoke spiraling up from the metal tubes, and she's confused walking around. And then there's this man stalking her, and he starts laughing and taunting her as she starts to run wherever she can, and she gets to this fire furnace, and this burnt man wearing a red and green sweater jumps on her, and then Tina wakes up. It was just a dream. So then we meet the rest of the main characters, Tina's friends, Johnny Depp's first role, who plays Glenn when he didn't look like a homeless pirate, Nancy and her bad boyfriend Rodney. And they go to school, and next they're all at Tina's house. Her parents went somewhere, so they got the house to themselves. And Glenn wants to impress the girls, and especially his girlfriend, Nancy, by convincing his mom he's gonna be gone for the night. So for some reason, he gets a boombox and has loud audio playing, like explosions, and Glenn tries telling his mom everything is alright because the girls start screaming to prank Glenn. And now he has to convince his mom everything is alright. So after he hangs up, Tina still can't get over that nightmare. Like, even if Freddy Krueger doesn't kill you in your dream, he will affect you mentally by marking you. For when you wake up, you're even more confused with the marking you got from Freddy Krueger. So Tina tells Nancy about the dream, and they connect even more because Nancy tells her one of the dreams she had, the guy wore the same colored sweater like Tina's dream. So then they hear something outside, and Glenn and the girls go out there. Glenn is trying to act tough, even if you could tell he's nervous, and goddamn, out of nowhere, Rodney comes out of the shadow and play attacks Glenn. And no one is happy to see Rodney. I mean, no one. Even Tina's not happy. But I got no idea if she's got personality disorder, because out of nowhere, Tina's overjoyed and horny for Rodney, and yup, you guessed it, they bang it out, and they are loud. I mean, poor Glenn got to hear it all, and he's thinking about that could be us, Nancy, because before Nancy told him they're not getting any. Poor Glenn. So poor Nancy. So poor Tina goes to sleep, and she wakes up, and a voice keeps saying her name. So she goes outside, and she gets confused again because she knows something is different. It's quiet. Not even a cricket is speaking. And this is when Freddy Krueger reveals himself with long stretched out arms, with his metal claws scratching the metal fences. And all he does is laugh at her. And she begs for God to help her. And this is what he tells her.
Please, God.
This is God.
I mean, come on, that's an amazing delivery. And that's him telling her, when you dream, he controls and he manipulates everything. And she runs away, and he chases her. And he's like a killer whale, just plays with his prey, where he thinks it's a fun game. And that's what makes Freddy Krueger so scary. And yeah, he tackles her under the sheets, and we all see and we see what the real world is her being sliced from the chest, and she gets raised up to the air, basically gets massacred from Freddy, where she's all bloody, and Rodney wakes up from her screams of pain, and she's floating. She hits Rodney. Now her blood's on him. Next, the cops are confused, yet they think Rodney is responsible. And the thing is where I think lots of slasher films with its sequels miss the point is of what made the first one great are the characters, because Tina, Nancy, Glenn, and even Rodney all have a personality. They aren't dull or plain. They have emotions, and when Tina gets killed, you're actually sad and terrified of her death. So next morning, Nancy is wearing an outfit trying to look like a 30-year-old mom, and her mom tells her just to skip school for today so she can grieve. But now she's traumatized and has guilt because she kind of blames herself, because the reason she was at Tina's house was because Tina was scared to go asleep. But she goes to school anyway, and when I say we got one of the coolest jump scares I've ever seen, I mean it. I mean, I don't lie. I'm not dramatic. So when she's at English class, where the teacher's that old lady from the Insidious movies, so that's pretty cool to find out. Then Nancy dozes off, and dead Tina calls her name, and Nancy looks up, and it's Tina in a clear, bloody body bag. And Nancy gets up and follows the blood trail where strange Freddy Krueger cosplay crashes into Tina and falls to the ground, and is like, hey, you need a hall pass. And Nancy's like, fuck you, and leaves until the hall monitor now has claw gloves and has a bloody face, and is like, watch. And it's like, watch out, Nancy. You'll be my bitch next. So Nancy gets to the basement, and Freddy Krueger is stalking her, and just like Tina before, jumps behind Nancy and grabs onto her, but Nancy burns herself on the furnace, waking her up, and with real life, she still has the burn still. So Nancy is taking a relaxing bath. I mean, goddamn, she's got a plastic-like pillow for the bath to relax. Talk about being fancy. So her mom tells her, hey, don't fall asleep taking a bath. And all I gotta ask is, at the 1980s, was that a popular, unfortunate thing, people falling asleep while taking a bath, and I guess probably dying? I got questions anyway. Soon as her mom says that, Goofy Nancy falls asleep, and that's when we get the most sexualized shot. Also, the coolest shot of any slasher movie, where Freddy Krueger's hand rises up from the water between Nancy's legs. And the mom talks to her again, saving Nancy, because she wakes up and the claws disappear. But goddamn it, Nancy, she falls asleep again, and Freddy Krueger's like, bitch, you're mine, and grabs her, drags her down this deep water, but she gets free and swims up and wakes up. And what happens next is her mom doesn't get mad at Nancy. She runs to the bathroom to see if her daughter's alright and comforts her. So next, Nancy is at her bedroom trying to stay awake because now she's severely paranoid to even close her eyes. So horny Glenn climbs up her window, but he doesn't get any because Nancy tells him to wake her up if she freaks out while sleeping. He agrees that Nancy dreams, and this is what I really don't understand is Nancy's now outside her house, walking on the sidewalk, and Nancy whispers to Glenn, and Glenn is there saying he's still awake while he's in her dream? I mean, I am dumb, so maybe I missed something. So Nancy goes to the jailhouse and looks at the window and sees Rodney sleeping, but Nancy yells to Rodney to wake up because Freddy Krueger walks into the jailhouse and just walks into the cell and looks at Nancy and just smiles at her because Nancy looks behind her and sees a decomposing Tina, and a nasty worm crawls out of her mouth. Then Freddy Krueger runs after Nancy, and guess who's asleep? Poor Glenn. I mean, I can't blame him. It's hard staying up all night. And Nancy wakes up and freaked out, and she sees Glenn sleeping and is pissed off and tells him to get out before he gets caught. And showing how lovely Nancy is, she just forgives Glenn and just tells him to get home safe. So Nancy knows something's wrong, so her and Glenn rush to the jailhouse, and Nancy and Glenn try convincing the cop at the front desk to check up on Rodney. While that's happening, Rodney is asleep and Freddy Krueger wraps a blanket around his neck and Rodney wakes up, but that still doesn't save Rodney as Freddy Krueger raises up the blanket, hanging Rodney. And when Nancy and her dad, Glenn, and the cop get to Rodney, it's too late. So Nancy and her dad and her mom are at Rodney's funeral. And when they get to the car, Nancy tells her dad about the man in her dream who's been killing her friends, saying to him, the man wears a red and green sweater and a hat. And the dad looks concerned and worried as he looks at Nancy's mom, showing he knows more than he's saying. So her mom is like, I don't like crazy Nancy. We're gonna fix ya. So she brings Nancy to the sleep doctor, and Nancy's like, I don't want to be here. But they put wires on her to track her movements when she sleeps. And Nancy, while sleeping, starts to freak out, and the sleeping charts go to an all-time high. And the doctors freak out and go to Nancy, and the mother wakes Nancy up, and Nancy has claw marks on her forearm, and Nancy has his hat, realizing she can bring him to the real world. So Nancy and her mom argue. Nancy is severely paranoid and anxious, while since the mother's worrying, she's now drinking again. Where the mom tells her Freddy Krueger is dead because she and the other parents killed him when he was set free, because he was a killer who killed kids with the metal claws. So Nancy calls Glenn and tells him he's probably next to be killed by Freddy. So no matter what, stay awake. Well, this is Glenn we're talking about, and he falls asleep. And Freddy Krueger drags him down his bed. I don't know what Freddy did to Glenn, but holy shit, it was rough because Glenn's blood shoots up from the bed, hitting the ceiling. So Nancy gets sick of it, and the Home Alone writer got to thank Nightmare on Elm Street because Elm Street did the home traps first. So Nancy goes to sleep, attracts Freddy where Freddy chases after her, but Nancy wakes up holding on to Freddy. So now Freddy is at the real world, and he gets hit and beat by all the traps. Then gangster Nancy sets him on fire. She locks Freddy at the basement and tells her dad to get the other cops to the house because she's caught the killer. So the dad and the cops go to her house. There's smoke in the house, and Nancy tells them Freddy's at the basement. They go down, but Nancy noticed fire footprints leading to her mother's room. So Nancy and her dad see Freddy Krueger, who's on fire, choking out Nancy's mother. Whoa. And the dad puts a blanket on both of them, setting the fire out, and the mother is dead. She's burnt to crisp. She's crispy chicken now. She's dead to the bones. And Freddy is gone until he tries attacking Nancy, but she tells him he's not real, and he disappears. So what made the first movie so good was not just Freddy Krueger being scary, it was also the great characters. It was about how fear can ruin your life and harm others. Alright, now we gotta talk about its sequel that I love because how unintentionally gay it is. It's truly amazing. And the thing is, the sequel is not scary. It's just bizarre and again, unintentionally funny, from the main characters screaming all the time to the weird sexualization and to the bizarre scenes. I love this sequel because how bad it is. So it starts out with the main character, Jessie, sitting on the school bus. Everything is normal until the bus starts driving fast. And the people on the bus tells the bus driver to slow down, but he doesn't listen until the bus drives off the road, gets to this cliff and starts braking around the bus. And the bus driver is now Freddy Krueger, and he starts walking down the aisle, slashing at people of the bus until Jessie wakes up, screaming very loud. So Jessie goes to school driving this piece of shit car, and he picks up his female friend Lisa, and they go to school. And this is when we get to the first unintentional gay scene where Jessie is at gym class outside playing baseball, and he runs into his friend Ron, and they start fighting for no reason, tackling each other, and Ron pulls down Jessie's shorts, revealing Jessie's ass. Why? I don't know why. And they both get in trouble. So next, his mom tells him if he wants to hang out with Lisa, he's gonna have to unpack his things in his room. So to clean his room, I guess he wants to look cool without an audience by putting on sunglasses, a rainbow hat, and puts on music on the boombox. And he dances, and he closes the drawer with his butt. Yeah, it's strange. In a scene for who? But Lisa walks into his room and catches them, and he's embarrassed. But he and Lisa unpack the rest of his things, and Lisa finds a diary. And they read it, and it's Nancy's diary talking about what happened to her. It's basically a lazy way for people who didn't watch the first one. They explain here. So Jessie goes to sleep, and while he's sleeping, he walks down the stairs, and there's our boy, Freddy. He's back and somehow more greasy looking. Nasty. And he basically jokes and literally just talks to Jessie, and he wants to make a deal with him. But Jessie wakes up again, screams like a little bitch. So then we to one of the strangest scenes that makes no sense and is bizarre. So Jessie and his family are hanging out at the living room, and they look at this pet bird they have, and it's at its cage, and it starts to freak out. So the dad checks on it, opens up the cage, and it flies and starts attacking them. And it's so funny because it's a small creature going crazy on the human. It's not scary like they wanted it. It's very stupid. And then what makes it more random is the bird just explodes to flames. Yeah, what the hell was that for? So Jessie wakes up from a dream, and he for some reason walks outside and goes to a gay bar. And his gym teacher's there and catches Jessie. So instead of bringing him back home or calling his parents, he brings Jessie to the school gym because his punishment is to run laps around the gym. So he tells Jessie to hit the showers, and the gym teacher goes to his office, and that's when the jump ropes go up to the gym teacher, wraps around his wrists, and pulls him across the floor to the showers while Jessie is still there. And this invisible entity rips off the gym teacher's clothes, starts whipping his ass with the towels. Yeah, see why I say this movie gets gay. Then he gets killed by claw marks down his back. Then Jessie looks at his hand and has the claw gloves on, and again does the classic Jessie move, scream. So the cops bring Jessie home, and the parents thank the cops, and instead of the dad being happy to see his son safe, no, he accuses Jessie of drugs. Dad of the year, jackass. So Lisa and Jessie go to the warehouse where Freddy Krueger was killed, and for it being burnt, it just looks abandoned. So at night, it's a POV shot of it going upstairs and to Jessie's sister's room, and Jessie is standing in front of her sleeping, wearing the claw gloves. He walks out of her room, realizing he almost killed his own sister. He tries not going to sleep, and he starts getting paranoid and angry faster because of no sleep, and Lisa's trying to understand what is going on. So Lisa has a party at her house, at the backyard, and Jessie is there, and Lisa and him start making out, and it gets explicit. I mean, not really, it's actually not high, it's fucking awkward. And he stops because Freddy Krueger's nasty tongue starts to lick Lisa's body. So Jessie freaks out and leaves, and Jessie sneaks to Ron's room and tells him to watch him while he sleeps and wake him up if something happens. Ron agrees, and of course they both go asleep, and Jessie wakes up in pain at his stomach and complains. Ron wakes up to ask Jessie if he's alright, and this is when we actually get the only actual good thing about this movie, where Freddy Krueger literally cuts open Jessie's stomach to come to the real world. And this is what I don't really understand is Freddy entering the real world, or is he taking over Jessie's body? Because all I see as an audience is Freddy Krueger, not Jessie. So I'm confused, or I'm just stupid. So yeah, Freddy Krueger kills Ron, then Jessie has control again and goes to Lisa's house, and Lisa's trying to comfort him and ask him what is going on because of Jessie's bloody hands, and he tells her he killed Ron, or Freddy basically killed him. And then it happens again. Freddy returns and chases after Lisa, and Lisa hides while Freddy looks outside and sees all the teenagers at this party, and he's like, shit, this is a buffet. And he slaughters most of the people at the party until this rocking American dad with a shotgun shoots at Freddy, and Freddy runs away. I mean, what a country. He has a shotgun at his house. So Lisa drives to the warehouse from earlier, and she tries talking to Freddy to get Jessie back to control, and it works, but with Freddy setting on fire, but they get no explanation, and Lisa peels off the burnt thing on Jessie, and yes, somehow Jessie survived, and yeah, that is Freddy's revenge. A very strange sequel that, again, I love for how funny it is. Now, finally, in the last movie I'm going to talk about today, guys, this video is long enough. And there's 4 movies left, so maybe I'll talk about it next week or spooky month 2023. I don't know. I just need a break from Freddy. It's been a lot. So the third Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite. I love the first Nightmare on Elm Street, of course, because of its scares and creative premise, but the third one is the most different and takes the most risk and pulls it off greatly. I always say, if you're gonna do a sequel, please be different from the first. I mean, out of all 3, Dream Warriors has the most creative kills and the most creative shots. So it begins with this girl named Kirsten building the house Nancy was at on the first Elm Street. So she basically then drinking coffee, she's like, nah, let me eat the coffee powder. And she turns up the music, and then her mom is like, what the fuck? And turns down the music and tells Kirsten to go asleep because she brought a guy home and she wants some dick. So she's like, bitch, go asleep. So Kirsten goes asleep, and she appears outside Nancy's old house, but it's abandoned, falling apart, just looks rough. Then there's this little girl circling around on this tricycle, singing the Freddy Krueger nursery rhyme, that's right. Then she sees Kirsten, runs back into the house, and Kirsten, for some reason, and follows her to the basement where this little girl is at this fire furnace and points to it and tells her that's where they went, and it's burnt kid skeletons. Very dark and disturbing. Then there's this sound upstairs, and the girl tells Kirsten he's home. So Kirsten's like, what the hell? And picks up the girl and runs. And she gets to the hallway. Then when she gets stuck because the floor turns to like clay mud and she's struggling to walk and get free, and then there he is, Freddy, stalking them. Then running up to them, but Kirsten gets free and gets to a room of all the dead people Freddy killed, hooked up on the ceiling, hanging. And the girl says something, and Kirsten looks at her, and now the girl is a small skeleton, and she screams and wakes up. And she gets up from her bed and goes to the bathroom and turns on the water, and that's when the faucet handle hooks around her hand, and Freddy's at the mirror laughing at her, and he cuts her, and now she finally wakes up screaming with cuts on her wrist, holding a razor blade. And her mother sees this and is like, damn, she's too crazy. And brings her to a mental institute. And Kirsten freaks out as they want to sedate her so she can calm down and go asleep. And of course she doesn't want that. So Dr. Neil, the main doctor, there tries calming her down. She's like, fuck you, kicks him to the floor. Then I don't know, but awesome. But I didn't know this, but awesome Lawrence Fishburne stars as the nurse, so that's cool. So the only thing that calms her down is when Nancy, that's right, Nancy's back with that perm, and she sings the same nursery rhyme, and she hugs and comforts Kirsten, the same sweet Nancy we knew. So Lawrence Fishburne shows Nancy around the facility, and she meets some of the patients. There's Philip, who's like making puppets, and he's the one who's questioning things there. Then she meets the guy who doesn't talk for some reason, and he's horny for this blonde nurse woman. Then she meets Roland, who is the one with the attitude and is mean to everyone. And then there's Will, who is in a wheelchair because of a suicide attempt. Then there's this goth girl and Jennifer who wants to be an actress when she gets out. Yeah, right. So we meet all of them, and then they're basically at a group therapy with Dr. Neil, Nancy, and this female doctor, and they all have one thing in common. They all have the same man appear at their dreams wearing that red and green sweater. So Nancy and Dr. Neil have dinner because he wants that Nancy ass, but she tells them if the patients could use this psychological drug to keep them awake until she can figure something out to help them. But Dr. Neil says no, and that leads to an awkward dinner. At night, while they're having dinner, everyone goes to sleep, and so Will asks Joey, the one who doesn't talk, if he can be on watch as he sleeps. He agrees to it, but Freddy Krueger turns to one of the puppets at Philip's room and goes up to Philip, and Freddy Krueger turns back to himself and stares at Philip, and while Philip opens his eyes, he's about to scream, but Freddy makes him speechless. And this is when we get to the scariest kill, as Freddy Krueger makes Philip be a puppet by having his veins be the string as Freddy controls him. And he controls him up to the bell tower, and Joey sees this and wakes up Will. And Joey tries telling the nurse at the desk, but she doesn't do anything. So Joey grabs a metal tray and starts hitting the doors to wake up the other patients. And they all watch and yell at Philip to wake up. It's too late as Freddy cuts the string and Philip falls to his death. So after his death, they have another group meeting, and they're all paranoid and scared for who will be next, and Dr. Neil approves the drug Nancy wanted, but the next night, Jennifer is too scared to go to sleep, and she convinces Lawrence Fishburne to let her watch TV all night because he's cool. But yeah, she's watching a talk show, and an actress is on there talking about study to be a successful actor. Dumb Jennifer. And then the host turns to Freddy Krueger, slashes the actress, then the TV glitches, and dumb Jennifer walks up to the TV, and the TV grows arms, grabs Jennifer, lifts her up, and Freddy Krueger says the best line.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
And kills Jennifer by shoving her into the TV, killing her. So Dr. Neil and Nancy go to Jennifer's funeral, and Dr. Neil sees this nurse staring at him, and she tells him that she knows Freddy and how to kill him forever. Then she disappears. Wow. So Nancy and Dr. Neil get the idea to hypnotize the patients and somehow dream together. So they try out, and it works. They're at the same dream, but they don't know it yet. And goddamn horny Joey sees the blonde nurse. She nods at him, follows her, and he gets to a room where she's at, and she tells him how much she loves him. It's pretty creepy. And back to Nancy and Neil and the patients, they realize they're dreaming, but realizes that as the blonde nurse spits sticky things onto Joey's hands and feet, trapping him on the bed. And yeah, Freddy Krueger appears and removes the bed, and the bed falls to a fire pit of hell. And back to the other gang, the group therapy room starts to shrink, and they all freak out. And they wake up and starts to shrink, and they all freak out, where they all wake up and find Joey's unconscious body. And the director of this mental institute fires both Nancy and Dr. Neil. And before that, Nun told Dr. Neil how to kill Freddy Krueger by finding his bones and burning it. Also, why Freddy Krueger is only killing those certain teens is because their parents killed them, and they're the last kids on Elm Street. So Nancy and Dr. Neil go to the bar to meet her dad and find out where the bones are, but Nancy and her dad argue, and Nancy walks away, but Dr. Neil convinces the dad to help him find the bones of Freddy. So Nancy goes back to the hospital and they dream together. And I forgot to say they all got their own powers with the dream. Kirsten is more athletic. Roland is super strong. Will is a goddamn wizard. And the goth girl wears a lot of leather and has gelled up mohawk. Very 80s. So Kirsten gets sent back to her room where Freddy kills the mother, chases after Kirsten, and Kirsten, just like Sally on Texas Chainsaw, jumps out of the window and back at Nancy's old house. And the goth girl is at a neon building area and she walks around confused. And Freddy, with some syringes, overdoses her. Then we get to Will and he turns to a wizard and Freddy's like, nah, bitch. Grabs Will, just stabs him. Then Nancy, Kirsten, and Roland meet up and save Joey, and they try beating Freddy, but he's too strong. Until Dr. Neil and the father find the bones, and they dig a hole, and Freddy returns to the real world, but as a skeleton beats and kills Nancy's father, and then starts to bury the unconscious Dr. Neil. Then he returns to the dream world and tricks Nancy, thinking it's her father, stabbing Nancy, killing sweet Nancy. But Dr. Neil wakes up, puts the bones at the hole, and puts holy water on it, killing Freddy Krueger. Yes, that is not all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but those are the best of the franchise, and yeah, it goes downhill after Dream Warriors. But hopefully you enjoyed episode 2 of Spooky Month 2022, and make sure to subscribe because it's free, and it's just kind, and share because don't be lazy. And peace out, guys. You guys